well, it's better late than never, I guess. It felt really weird not making this at the start of this year, but I just wasn't ready to get back into writing at the time. Then again, if I had done it earlier, there's quite a few things on this list that I wouldn't have included because I only got around to playing them this year. Sometimes it's nice to give it a little room. I usually do some honourable mentions and then a top 10, but I only actually finished 15 games from 2021, so I figured I'd just talk a little bit about all of them. We'll start off with some shorter overviews and brief opinions for the first few, and then as we get into the top spots I'll go a bit deeper. Now that's done with, let's get going. Number 15. Unbeatable White Label. Unbeatable White Label is a rhythm game from D-Cell Games, which serves as the prologue to Unbeatable, a Kickstarter game currently in development. The two most important parts of a rhythm game, the gameplay and the music, are both immaculate. I still regularly listen to the demo tapes, and they're supported by a gorgeous cel-shaded aesthetic. I'd have this higher on the list, but with it just being a demo, I don't think that's exactly fair to the other games. I did enjoy this more than some full games I played in 2021 though. It's fantastic, and it's free, so if you haven't already, you should go get it right now. Number 14. Metroid Dread. Metroid Dread is the first new entry in the Metroid series since Other M 11 years earlier, and the first one I'd played since Corruption 3 years before that. I've never been super into the Metroid series, honestly. I'm much more into the Vania half of the Metroidvania genre, and Dread did nothing to change my opinion. I don't really like it. The ME sections were an interesting aside at first, but just became progressively less and less interesting and more tedious as the time went on. I didn't feel any dread, more a vague sense of annoyance and frustration throughout. It's a well-made game and it's not bad, I just don't like it. Number 13. Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite is the long-awaited, oft-delayed follow-up to Halo 5 and continues 343's track record of making pretty bad games. While not as bad as 4 and definitely not as bad as 5, Infinite is still not a very good game. The story is straight bad, barely makes sense, requires outside reading to be comprehensible, and yet again introduces a new bad guy in the last 5 minutes to set up future games. While not at all a good game, I did at least enjoy some of my time with it. Grappling is kinda cool, and it was nice to play multiplayer for a few weeks, but from what I know they've even managed to ruin that at this point. Maybe Master Chief should have just stayed frozen. Number 12. Cave Story's Secret Santa. Cave Story's Secret Santa is a mostly fun and definitely free stealth puzzle game with a frankly terrible name, in which Balrog travels through 3 different areas returning stolen Christmas presents. It's got a nice little story and a cute aesthetic, but it's honestly a bit tedious after a while. Luckily though, it's also quite short, so it doesn't last long enough for that to become a real problem. It's hard to be too critical of the game, seeing as it was given out completely free. It was nice, but it's hardly a required experience. Number 11. New Pokemon Snap. New Pokemon Snap is, as the name implies, a new Pokemon Snap game. The long-awaited sequel to one of my favourite N64 games, now featuring Pokemon all the way up to Generation 6. Travel the Lental region, taking pictures of a variety of cool and important Pokemon, but especially Quagsire. I love Quagsire. To be honest, if Quagsire wasn't in the game, this wouldn't be nearly as high on the list. It just feels kind of artificially long, like they were scared people would stop playing too early. I used to replay the first one a lot just because of how much I liked the flow, and this one doesn't have the same appeal. I think I'd probably like the game more if I hadn't waited so long for it, but as it is, it's just okay. Number 10. 100 Days. 100 Days is a wine-making simulator, though with a lot more puzzle mechanics than I was expecting. The tutorial takes you from a complete novice to taking down an evil wine cult, with some side quest into chakras in the middle, before suddenly stopping and leaving you to your own devices. While a neat idea, it doesn't quite scratch the itch I wanted it to. I wanted more of a management sim going in, and I got that in some ways, but it's way heavier on puzzles than you'd think. To do pretty much any task, you have to place different shaped tiles on a board, and it's an interesting method, but it's very odd. Also, it does help to understand wine a little bit before going in, which I didn't at all. I still don't. Number 9. Clawfish. Clawfish is a fishing game in which you collect all manner of different salt and freshwater fish by playing a lot of UFO catchers. I really enjoyed Clawfish, it's a pretty chill experience, but it is very short. Being short isn't exactly bad. I'd rather a good short game than a bad long one, but even for me it was short. It was also a little buggy when I played, but not in a bad way. The bugs were kind of useful, like how you could move faster if you held two directions at once. The dev was also nice to me in the one brief interaction we had, so that helped. I can highly recommend Clawfish, though if you're very precious about your money, I can see you not thinking it was entirely worth it. Number 8. Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion. Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion is a game in which an illiterate turnip refuses to pay taxes, collects a lot of hats, and kills the government. I didn't really know what to expect going into this, but I really enjoyed my time with it. It's got an adorable art style and some cute character interactions throughout, and overall was just a fun world to spend time in. It also goes places you wouldn't expect and has some kind of dark undertones to the story if you pay close enough attention. It's also a very tight game, doing everything it wants to in a short, concise package. If you're a big fan of vegetables or really hate the government, this is the game for you. Number 7. Imposter Factory. Imposter Factory is yet another great and emotional game from Freebird Games, this time involving a time-travelling bathroom and a whole lot of murders. I'm not sure how much I like this one over the others in the series, though that isn't to say this one's bad by any means. It's definitely good, I just don't think it's my favourite. That being said, my favourite character of the entire series is introduced in this game, even overtaking the platypus from To the Moon, the all-important Rye-Spot. I think my main issue is with the motivation behind the driving force for the plot, it's just not something I can personally agree with, plus the near absence of Neil and Ava. Without spoiling too much, the game definitely involves them heavily, just not in a way I was expecting. Overall though, Imposter Factory is definitely worth playing if you like the series and has a fantastic ending. Maybe just know that it's different enough from the earlier titles that you might not quite get what you thought you would going in. Number 6. Omno. Omno is a puzzle platformer and the first game from its solo developer, which is heavily reminiscent of games like Abzu and especially The Pathless. If you know me at all, that's some pretty high praise. While it doesn't quite reach their heights, it definitely has the right flavour and captures the feel incredibly well. I especially love all of the animals, they're great to interact with in the world and then make for awe-inspiring set pieces between areas. The main issue though is the pacing. It starts off pretty reasonable and then gets faster and faster to the point where some of the later areas can be finished in less than 10 minutes. It doesn't exactly feel rushed, just very quick and quite unbalanced. If the order had been the other way around, I think I'd understand better. Omno is the perfect game to get through in an afternoon, and I'm definitely looking forward to see what Studio Inky Fox make next. Number 5. Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy is an action-adventure game based on the Marvel series of the same name. Similar to the Insomniac Spider-Man games, this has nothing to do with the film series, so you're free to start here, and while some prior knowledge can provide a bit more context to what's going on, it's by no means necessary. You play as Peter Quill, leading the Guardians of the Galaxy on a quest to fix the universe after they accidentally free an alien imprisoned in a mysterious yellow stone. While that's the main crux of the story, the much more interesting aspects come from the various characters you'll interact with, be they the other members of the Guardians, or the help you'll find along the way. As a story, it's fine, a fun time, but as an exploration of character relationships, it's one of the strongest titles we've had in a long time. Before this came out, I had basically no interest in the game whatsoever. While I like the films a decent amount, I didn't like them enough to pick up a kind of generic looking game, so I didn't bother with this at all. Not long after release though, a lot of people I knew started talking about how good it was, how interesting the story and characters were. So many people that I felt I couldn't ignore it and decided to pick it up. Needless to say, I'm very glad I did, because it ended up being one of my favourite games of the year. There's some really great character work through the game, the combat and gameplay is fun, but the character interactions are what I was there for. It's also a surprisingly deep exploration of the psyche of each of the Guardians, and especially into Star-Lord's fears. I would be very happy for another one of these, and highly recommend trying it out. Number 4. Kena Bridge of Spirits. Kena Bridge of Spirits is the first game from Ember Lab, though you're probably familiar with their work as they were the animation studio behind the Zelda fan film Terrible Fate in 2016. Kena is a spirit guide on a journey to bring balance to a world thrown into chaos after a masked spirit begins to spread corruption. To do this, you'll need to gain passage to the mountain shrine, but first you'll need the support of the village's spirits to get there. There will be challenges along the way, from puzzles to corrupted monsters, but you'll find the rather adorable rot to help you overcome it all. This is one of the best looking games of this generation so far. I'm not usually one to harp on about the visuals of a game, but it really looks fantastic. The cutscenes do look better as you'd expect, but there's so little difference between them and the gameplay that it's honestly staggering. It's frankly ridiculous how much better this looks than some games from much larger studios. It's not perfect, the gameplay isn't the most inspired, but it serves its function well, and some of the areas went a little longer than I'd have liked, but they're minor issues compared to how much I enjoyed my time with the game. I think my biggest complaint is the combat. In some ways I wish it just wasn't there. It's fine, but it'd be nice to just go through solving puzzles, and it's easily my least favourite part. I was super excited for this before it came out, and it delivered on just about everything I wanted. The only regret I have is that when I got it there wasn't a physical copy I could pick up. But now there is, so you should get that and try it as soon as you can. Number 3. Death's Door. In Death's Door, you are a crow, a reaper who collects the souls of the dead for the Reaping Commission to power the doors they use to reap souls. While you're out to collect your assigned soul, you're immortal, so it's imperative for you to collect them and return as quickly as possible. After another crow steals the soul you'd been sent to collect, you are forced to collect 3 immensely powerful giant souls, with enough power to open Death's Door and get your assigned soul back. You'll have to collect a variety of different weapons and skills to traverse the world and take down a witch, a king and a beast, all in an effort to keep the Lord of Doors happy and get back to normal without too much paperwork. I feel like I say this about some game every year, but any other year this would be my number 1. At this point in the list it can get really difficult to choose between them, with only tiny differences edging one out over the others, and this time Death's Door is the one that loses out. Prior to release I wasn't actually interested at all. I'd played Titan Souls before and that was cool, but I wasn't exactly champing at the bit for more from Acid Nerve. Eventually I watched the no-clip documentary on the game, and that was what finally pushed me into getting it, and I'd have felt pretty dumb if I hadn't. I loved so much of this game. To start with, I love crows, so that was already a big plus, but the aesthetic of the game is so strong and was something I really appreciated while playing. The gameplay is tight and has surprising depth if you want to go those ways, and the music is fantastic too. There are some bits I didn't like having to plant all of the plants at the end to unlock the secret ending, but just about everything else was great. Part of me feels bad for this not being higher, but it was just beaten out by 2 of my most anticipated releases for 2021. Number 2. Monster Hunter Rise. Monster Hunter Rise is the newest Monster Hunter game from Capcom in which you hunt monsters. As a recently promoted hunter in Komura's guild, you'll be required to go out on hunts in the surrounding areas to keep everyone safe. The greatest threat is the Rampage, where herds of monsters stampede out of control, destroying everything in their path, a calamity which struck 50 years prior and is at risk of happening again. It's up to you to search for the cause of the Rampage, taking care of the dangerous monsters along the way, and find out more about the mysterious flying serpents you keep seeing overhead. I'm not exactly a Monster Hunter superfan, but this is definitely my favourite Monster Hunter game. One of the main issues I used to have with Monster Hunter was how slow the game was, not necessarily in the combat but in the traversal, and especially so with the old loading between zones. Where the individual zones were removed in world, this game really ramps up your movement abilities, and I love it all the more for it. Palamutes are a great way of getting around while doing prep work before the fight, like collecting spirit birds or sharpening, and wirebugs allow you to cover great distances while also offering the chance to deal huge damage or recover from attacks quicker. I know some people don't like how quick the game is, but as someone who plays dual blades explicitly because they're fast, making the game even faster just makes me enjoy it even more. There's definitely things I miss from World though, like not being able to mark things on the minimap or track small monsters, but this is easily the game in the hunting genre into which I've put the most time. I will say it was a bit lacking when it first released, but now after over a year of patches, even without Sunbreak, it's well worth putting the time into. My game of the year for 2021, Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker. Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker is the culmination of an 11-year-long story in which a cat kills a bird. Eorzea is on the brink of destruction from a primal god, so you set off to do the one thing you do best and kill it. Killing it makes the problem worse. Now if someone gets too sad, they'll turn into a demon and kill everyone around them, and those lucky enough to survive may well just turn into a monster themselves, and no one has any idea what to do about it. Oh well, we had a good run. Maybe we can just run away instead. It wouldn't be me if I didn't cheat somewhere on a list, and this time I'm putting essentially all of Final Fantasy XIV at my number 1 spot. I played the entire game in 2021, so it's hard to unwrap my feelings for all of it as a whole from Endwalker specifically, but Endwalker is probably my second favourite part of the entire game. It's a fantastic way to wrap up this decade-long arc, and I enjoyed every depressing minute of it. There's more to say about it, but I've literally just made a tier list of all the 14 expansions, so you can go there for even more of my opinions on the game. Including everything, I put nearly 1,000 hours into 14 last year, but just Endwalker accounts for over 100 of those, and that was just over the course of 1 month. If you're already into 14 then you've already done this, and if you're not, then did you know that the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV has a free trial and includes the entirety of A Realm Reborn and the award-winning Heavensward expansion up to level 60 with no restrictions on playtime? Sign up and enjoy Eorzea today. I'm glad I've finally done this. Despite what I say much of the time, I do enjoy making my Game of the Year lists. It would also have felt very strange having done one of these for each of the last 11 years and then not this one. Do feel free to let me know what you think about my list and what yours would have been in the comments or on my Discord. Next year I promise to get my Game of the Year list out on time. Or at the very least not this late. Thanks for sticking around. Bye. Special thanks to my patrons, Justin Wood, Hobbs, Koopy Vegeta and Gunrunner. You can join my patrons at patreon.com/Holden Gatsby, check out my TikTok and Twitter at Holden Gatsby, and follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Holden Gatsby. Don't forget to subscribe to all of my channels. If you want more, you can watch my last video now, but if not, then thanks for sticking around. Bye.